I'm good. I'm good. Thank you for joining us on the call. Um, Erica, what type of attorney are you? What do you practice? Got it. Okay, so that sounds complex. Got it.
That life changed. Um, you know, and now I'm moving to Maryland. So I need enough to kind of help cover my expenses with the move, and so it's not a total wash for me. I guess I have a series of questions um, that I can kind of run through if you want me to start.
Yeah, absolutely. Life, as you mentioned, life changes, unfortunately, and sometimes fortunately. So these are I never want you to feel like you're in the minority. I would say majority of people that I talk to, these are the situations that take place. It's either a divorce or a quick relocation for job purposes. So if we can hopefully put something together where it makes sense to you, it makes sense to us, that way you can make that move, and hopefully it be as smooth of a process as possible. So I'm happy to go over any questions that you might have, any objections, and we can go through it one by one.
I want to ask you a question. Um, what kind of cash offer would you be willing to do? Just so she'd have enough to move.
Yeah, so a cash offer likely would not make any sense in this scenario, only because I don't have, I might have it in front of me actually. I believe the mortgage amount owed is about, okay.
Okay.
Uh-oh. Okay, well, we're gonna have to wait for her to give us a call back. Um, on my side, noise canceling. How do I do that? Okay, better. Oh, you couldn't hear her? Got it. Okay, I turned it off. Appreciate you. All right, looks like she's calling back in. I don't know why it's not ringing on my side, so I'm gonna call her right back, and we will jump right into it. John, are you recording this on your side? Okay, because I was looming it, but I think that was also messing it up. So if you can record it on your side, perfect.
Hello, you've reached the voicemail there.
Okay, she says, "Okay, I'm back." Let's see.
Okay, hold on.
Not
Hold
a.
on, Matt.
Let's patch mom back in. Damn, what keeps happening here? We're having some.
Hello, you've reached the voicemail there.
Andy, I kind of missed it as well. There was a part of me that easily could have taken this phone call by myself, but there was something that felt good just, jumping back up on stage. See if we can get mom and Erica back on the phone. Hi, Erica.
Again,
We'll keep trying till we get it.
I'm coming. Oh, okay, perfect. So I don't think that they can do it like a cash purchase. It's more of a, isn't it like a 8,000 or something like that?
Right. So, in terms of the cash offer question, it's always a good question. And cash sometimes is what we try to lead with because cash is the cleanest, right? We're all done with each other after closing. It's a very simple process. Unfortunately, with this, with your loan balance being close to 390, let's just say after your payoff, that's really close to what the property's worth right now. So a cash offer likely wouldn't make sense. And just so you understand what I mean by that, most cash offers, unless I'm a homeowner who sells my home and I'm taking the proceeds of that and I'm going to go purchase a new home in cash, from an investing standpoint, most investors have to come in at a discount in order to be able to pull their money back out. So let's just say I were to buy your house, let's say it's worth $400,000. I need it somewhere at a 20 to 30% discount so I can turn around and go get financing on it because the loans that are available to me are 20% down payment loans, so 80% LTV. So I need to be able to go get an 80% LTV, 20% down payment loan and be able to pull my money back out of that property. So if I buy it for full asking price or close to it, when I go take it to get financing, I'm going to leave a lot of money in that property. Not really ideal. So cash offers in these lower equity scenarios usually don't make any sense for the seller. It still makes sense for me if I get my number, but that's going to leave you having to write a very large check at closing, which is what we don't want to do.
Hmm. Okay, so what I'm saying is that what time money can you give her so she can move? How much would that be? Or it wouldn't be anything.
No, it would be. We're going to try to always do something. So bare minimum, what we do in our scenarios and situations. So prior to speaking with Erica and finding out that she was also the seller as well as the listing agent, usually those two people are not related, right? The listing agent is separate and different than the seller of a property. So bare minimum in our transactions, what we do is we compensate the listing agent. And then we also pay buyer and seller closing costs as well on behalf of the seller. So in a scenario like this where the purchase price is close to $400,000, our closing costs that we would be paying total is probably going to be somewhere around $8,000. So bare minimum, we're going to pay buyer seller closing costs, which is probably around $8,000. And then now that the mortgage statement was sent over, which I absolutely appreciate, I noticed that it's a 7% interest rate, which, is the going rate right now for the most part. So it's high, but it's market average. But for me as an investor, I don't have a lot of options on my side of what I can do with that property at that interest rate and that monthly payment. So my cash to close paying Erica is probably going to be somewhere around the $5,000 to $6,000 range now that I have the mortgage statement in front of me.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Uh-huh.
Because the payoff amount right now is close to 390 and it's currently on the market for 415. What will that property actually sell for? We don't know. Of course, hopefully somebody comes in today and offers 415. I would love that for Erica and I'm sure she would as well. But if any price reductions start to take place, she's going to have to pay out a buyer's agent plus her own closing costs. She's getting very, very close to that break even or maybe writing a check at closing, depending on how long it sits on the market and what that final offer comes in at. So my offer at least has her walking away with some money in that scenario.
Right. So the structure, what happened to like my loan and title? What does that look like over a period of time?
Very good question. So everything I always say, this might seem like an unfamiliar structure to you, which is obviously understandable, but it's a lot more familiar than you even realize. So when you purchased this property, I'm sure you had an agent, whatever it was, but you had a purchase agreement, aka a contract that was approved, and then it went to the title company, and a title search was performed, and a title commitment was received, and recordings and closings at the title company. That all takes place here. Also, as well, when you received financing for this property, you got a lender and financing, and at the closing table, you signed a bunch of documents. Some of those being mortgage documents. The same exact thing is going to be taking place here as well. So we're going to create a promissory note plus a deed of trust, but in this is Florida, so it's going to be a mortgage deed because Florida is a mortgage deed state. So the same exact thing that you have between your lender, a promissory note, aka mortgage, we're going to put that in place on our side as well. The same thing that you have between your lender, a mortgage deed, we're going to have the same thing on our side as well. So your mortgage will not be paid off at closing. It will not be satisfied at closing, but the note we are creating is going to mirror the terms of your underlying mortgage. So it's going to have the same principal balance, the same interest rate, the same monthly payments, everything. So we're going to pay the exact amount of money every single month that you owe on your mortgage, and then that's going to get paid to the lender. And then at some point, we are going to refinance or sell that property. And at that point, your underlying mortgage would be paid off and satisfied. So I always say, let's just say we make an agreement today and we close in the next 21 to 30 days at the title company. At that closing, you're 99% done with the property. You don't have any maintenance or expenses or overhead. You have no responsibilities to that property. Your only responsibility is to collect a monthly payment that is being paid to the lender. And we don't even want or need to pay you directly. We can pay it directly to the lender and then email you an invoice every single month. And then when we refinance or sell that property in the future, that's when you're 100% done with the property.
Mm-hmm. I see. And what about things like, so they're like that, the property has HOA dues?
Yes, ma'am.
They're not a lot, but what about those?
100%. So I just had a conversation with a seller when I was walking the dog earlier, about an hour ago, a seller in Texas, and he asked me the same question because they have an HOA as well. And the way that I always reference is, imagine that you're standing in the sand right now and you have footprints in the sand. We're going to move you over to the right, and then we're going to step in those footprints for you. So everything that you're responsible for and everything that you're doing now, a buyer is going to take on that responsibility, including those HOA payments as well. So if it's monthly or annual or quarterly, whatever it is, anything additional to the mortgage that you're responsible for as the homeowner, the new buyer will be responsible for as well.
Mm-hmm. Uh-huh. Can you get clearance before you have a buyer responsible for those?
Yes. So same way that if you receive an offer today from a traditional buyer or cash buyer, you're responsible for your property and your mortgage payments and things like that until the closing takes place. Once closing hits, then you are no longer responsible, and the new buyer would pick up those mortgage payments, start making those payments on your behalf, and they are the ones that are now responsible for that property and the upkeep and the maintenance and the expenses and your escrow for your taxes and insurance. All of that is the new buyer's responsibility at that point.
Or don't you have to find a buyer though, right?
For this one, I will have to find a buyer because I don't think that I could be the buyer on this one, only because it just doesn't really make sense with my exit strategy that I usually apply. The HOA, I'd love to see the HOA information, the bylaws or the CC&Rs, to see if there's any rental restrictions. It's very, very common that with HOAs, there will be some sort of rental restriction, maybe a 6-month minimum lease or a 12-month minimum lease. So with that 7% interest rate, long-term rent doesn't make sense. I think long-term rents are somewhere around $2,000 a month. And so obviously your mortgage payment is much higher. I see you have it rented or attempting $3,300 a month. So that has you losing a little over $300 a month.
I have it listed because the renting is not going to be an option.
Of course. Yeah. Me as an investor, long-term rent doesn't make sense. The HOA likely has some sort of rental restrictions. If not, fantastic. And maybe we can work something out and I can figure out a different solution. But I'm going to go ahead and say likely has some sort of rental restriction. So that's not going to make sense. My only option at that point is to source an owner occupant for that property. And so either I buy it and then seller finance it to the owner occupant, or I source the owner occupant directly and then just put you two together. Whoever it is, though, whether it's me, whether I source somebody else who's going to seller finance it to an owner occupant, or the owner occupant Sorry, I heard like a screaming noise outside. I thought it was like a tornado siren or something. Or the owner occupant itself, you will be introduced to that individual prior to closing.
And you know how long that would take? You're not sure.
I don't know. I always say, let's just say we sign the agreement today. I will have a very, very, very good understanding of where we are in terms of interest and traction within the first 7 to 10 days, 7 to 14 days, probably, but definitely within that first 7 to 10 day window. I have a decent sized owner occupant database because I'm also partnered with a company called Leasing to Buy. We do lease options and a lot of seller financing to owner occupants. So I already have a database that I can go into and see if there's anybody in there that would be interested. So I have a good feeling that I'll know very, very well within that first 7 or so days of where we are with interest.
hmm And let's see here. So um, at closing, when would she get like the 6, 7,000? Like we're hoping around at least that.
Yes, ma'am. That would happen right at closing. So the same way that maybe if you remember when you purchased your home, when you had to wire into closing, whatever your down payment was and whatever your cash to close was to close that property, same exact structure would
Yeah.
take place here. So let's just say it was $5,000. The day of closing or the day before closing, that $5,000 would be wired into the title company. All of the final documents would be signed by buyer and seller, and then the title company would close and record that transaction. And at that point, title company would then disperse that cash to close, that $5,000 at that point. And then buyer side is also paying buyer and seller closing costs as well. So the day of closing, as long as it doesn't close later in the day, so let's just say we close on a Monday at maybe 4 p.m., you would likely receive your money next day because at that point it would be too late in the day for them to disperse, but it would take place the next day. And then if we can close it early
And,
enough in the day, you would receive disbursement same day.
and where are you located?
I'm in Tennessee. I'm about 30 minutes or so south of Nashville.
hmm And where's your title company?
Title company will be in Florida, local.
Pensacola?
Probably not Pensacola specifically, but what's beautiful about the structure that we're putting in place is you have the ability to go into the title company and sign all your documents at closing if you'd like, or because we don't have to bring a lender into this transaction, the lending is already in place. The title company can send out mobile notaries. So all the closing documents can be signed at the comfort of your own home or wherever you're located. They'll send out a mobile notary. You can review and sign everything in front of the mobile notary. Then the mobile notary sends all of that back to the title company. Title company reviews, make sure it's all correct, and then they record that information that they received back. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a title company in Pensacola, but it'll be in that northern Florida area likely.
And do you coordinate all of that?
Yes, ma'am. So I have a transaction coordinator that as soon as we get a signed agreement between us, I will plug in my transaction coordinator and they will open up title at the title company. You'll be included in those communications with the title company. They might ask for some information from you, and then we start everything on our side. So I'll start marketing, I'll start looking for that owner occupant while the title company is taking care of the title search. Title search, depends. It might take 3 days to get the title commitment back. It might take 7 days or a week or so to get that title commitment back. So we're just kind of waiting on title at that point, making sure that the property comes back with clean title. If so, and that's great. And then we'll just continue working and finding that owner occupant.
hmm Well, 5 is too low. What can you do above 5? 5 is definitely too low.
Yes, unfortunately, I don't think I'm going to be much higher than 5, especially with a 7% interest rate. The average interest
hmm
rate that I deal with on my side for these types of transactions is anywhere from 3.5 to 4% interest rates. So at
hmm
7%, my options are very, very limited, and I just have to be very conservative in those scenarios and situations,
You
especially.
can't do 6.
I'd have to look at to see what my numbers shake out to be. But again, I have to be concerned. I want and trust me, I want you at the closing table, both Erica and mom, to be at the closing table and not feel like you gave the property away or feel like you're disheartened because you could have gotten a better deal or anything along those lines. I definitely don't want you to feel like that. So I always try to put my best foot forward and give you what I think is appropriate and the best that I can do. But unfortunately, with this, I only have one exit strategy. I only can go get an owner occupant. And you've been trying to get an owner occupant this entire time, except the owner occupant I'm looking for is a different type. It's someone that wants owner financing as opposed to traditional. So I only have one out and it's a 7% interest rate. So I have to be very, very conservative with my figures. So it'll be between 5 or 6, but it's likely leaning more towards 5, to be honest. Plus we're paying buyer and seller closing costs. And at that price point is probably going to be another $8 or so thousand. So my total cash to close is somewhere between $13,000 and $15,000. And if you look, 385 is the payoff on the mortgage plus another 15,000 or so. I'm buying that property for full asking price at that point, full retail value. I have no equity on day one. I have a 7% interest rate. I have no exit strategies. Long-term rent in the area is somewhere around $2,000 a month on a mortgage of $3,600 a month plus. So I have to be very, very careful.
Okay, so do you want to get back? Yeah, I think that Matt, you sent me a proposed contract. Now that you have the mortgage statement, would that would need to be revised?
Yes,
I guess in light of some of the questions I had, So maybe could you do that? I think about it.
Yeah, I'm gonna do it right now, actually, because I have my dot loop pulled up. So I'm gonna pull it up right now. I have a question on the mortgage statement that you had sent over. It may be because of when you sent it over, but it was showing also. It looks like one missed payment potentially. So it was showing a $7,600 amount due. Has that payment been caught up, or is there no plans on paying that missed payment?
That payment hasn't been caught up.
Okay, and there's no plans on catching that up, correct?
No.
Okay, so Mom and Erica, again, I want to be fully transparent with you guys. That $5,000 to $6,000 is predicated on a clean and up-to-date mortgage. So if I also have to take into consideration another $3,600 or so, that's where it gets very, very tricky.
Okay.
Because now I'm over asking price on what I would be paying. I'd be paying $5,000 or $6,000 to Erica, plus another $3,600 for the missed payment, plus closing costs. I'm now probably over what that property is worth. So I have, and I want to help you out. And again, it makes sense to both of us to bring that mortgage back current. Sure.
I have a work call coming through.
Yes, ma'am.
And let's do that, and I'll call you back in just a bit.
Okay. You want me in the next couple of minutes or in like an hour or so?
Oh, she'll call you back in the next couple of minutes.
Okay, not a problem. Do you have any questions for me, Mom, before we get off the phone?
No. She's not going to be able to get caught up.
Okay.
And so I don't know whether it's going to work out because we don't want to just give it away. I mean, $5,000 is nothing, but
you have to look at what she'd be walking away with, though, if she were to sell traditionally. Whatever the proceeds are, she's also going to have to pay that 36. I don't think she's walking away with any money if she were to sell traditionally. It's listed for $415 right now with no offers. It's likely going to have to be price reduced, and then there's going to be, I think there's a 2.5% commission being offered to the buyer's agent. Plus, she's going to have to pay her own closing costs. And most buyers in this market right now are coming in either at a price reduction or they're asking for seller credits. So they might ask for 1 to 2% in seller credits on top of that. So there's a chance that she's walking away with $0 at that point. And how long is it going to take to get that offer? That offer might not come in for another 30 or so days. Maybe more than that, maybe less than that. And that's our hope, of course. Again, I don't hope that my scenario is the only one that makes sense. I hope, again, a magical offer comes in tonight at full asking price that makes more sense than mine. But if not, that traditional offer might take 30 to 45 more days to come in. Plus a traditional offer, if it comes in 30 days, the average closing time frame for a traditional offer is 30 or so days. So now, even if the offer comes in 30, she's not closing for another 60. And it sounds like she has a time frame in which she'd like to move to Maryland and take on that next stage. And it might take 60 days just to get $0 at closing. Where with my offer and scenario, I'm offering to pay the past due amount to bring that mortgage current, plus pay buyer and seller closing costs on our behalf, which is another eight or so $1,000. So $8,000 for closing costs estimate plus $3,600 for the past due amount. What is that? That's almost $12,000 I'd be paying at closing right there.
Right.
And her payoff is 385. I think it's 386. And then after after the lender adds on their fees, it's probably closer to 390. And she's on the market for 415. She's very, very tight right now, plus a missed payment of $3,600 that she has to take into consideration. So
yeah, she's in a tight spot.
She's in a very Hi, Erica. Oh, you're still here?
Yep.
Perfect. I'm glad we didn't get off the phone. I was talking to Mom while you were gone.
Yeah. Well, okay. So would you put that together, Matt? And then I just need to really think about it, pray about it, talk to my mom about it.
Oh.
So Matt, before we get off, so when I talk to Erica, you'll bring it up. You'll pay with tax due. Right. I did that. I didn't have a plan until I knew what my options were. And now that I know, I would bring it up if this is continuing. He said that he would take care of the past due.
Correct.
Really help.
That was
instead of.
Yeah. So what we usually do, and again, I don't want you to feel like you're in the minority. I would say well over 50% of these transactions that we do are with sellers who are past due on their mortgage. Sometimes only a month, sometimes 5 months. And so what we do is part of our cash to close is applied to that mortgage default. So the title company will contact a lender, and let's just say I bring $3,600 to closing. Title will take that $3,600 and they'll pay that to the lender to bring that mortgage now back to good standing. Now, my only question to you and what I think we need to figure out is the $3,600 that's owed, which is, I think I noticed that mortgage statement is from May 1st, the date. So is that potentially now 2 months behind?
No. So let me see. Let's see. So May and June, right? Yeah. So June is owed. That's why it's that amount.
So June is owed, and then hopefully if this was closed in June, the new buyer can start making payments in July and not have that be your responsibility. Now, if you stay on the market looking for a traditional offer any longer, because we're already June 3rd, and you don't secure an offer within the next day or so, you're likely going to run into a second month of missed payments. So now that $3,600 is times 2, and that snowball just gets a little bit bigger and bigger. So time is usually, I never want to do pressure tactics, of course, but time is of the essence on these late payments, on us being able to catch those up before it gets too big, especially on a deal that doesn't really make a lot of sense to begin with that 7% interest and us coming in at what we need to come in at. So we would have the ability to come in, catch you up. So we would pay that at closing. That would be our cash to close, is making sure that mortgage is paid and up to date, plus paying buyer and seller closing costs on your behalf. So you don't have to write a single check at closing. That mortgage will be caught up for you on our behalf. And then we'll also be paying anywhere from probably $8,000 to $9,000 in closing costs as well, between your closing costs and ours. So our total cash to close is probably somewhere between $12,000 and $14,000, as long as we don't get into July where another payment is going to be at top of that. And that's where likely this deal wouldn't make any. I would probably have to rescind my offer at that point if we go any further past pretty much today. Because closing for us is probably somewhere between 14 to 25, 26 days, which puts us right at the end of June. So if we go past pretty much today, now that's 2 missed payments, which puts us at, what is that, almost $8,000 at that point. I would probably have to respectfully say no longer interested. And also, if we catch up your mortgage, good point is that obviously late payments are never good for anybody's credit. So if we were able to catch up that mortgage, we now put it back into good standing. More future on-time payments occur. That'll improve your credit over time as well.
Okay. And it's would you still do the 5,000?
I don't think so at this point with that 3,600 and some change being owed plus our closing costs. I don't think it's a deal that makes sense at 5. Yeah, unfortunately. If that wasn't the case, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. We'll talk about it All right. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to update this offer and I'm going to send it over tonight just for you guys to review, and then let me know if there's anything that I can do on my side.
Okay.
Awesome. Thank you both. One second. I'm going to transfer this to my phone. One second. Okay. One second. I gotta go upstairs real fast and we can discuss this quickly. I'm gonna pull up Discord on my laptop. So my wife doesn't kill me while she's cooking dinner downstairs. I took up too much time. Everybody hear me? All right, so that's a good example of a seller who doesn't really have a lot of options at this point. So I'll give her time to think. I never want to do pressure tactics. I never want to make them feel like they got to make a decision on the phone, of course. Especially, let mom chime in and feel like she's participating and all of that. They're going to probably try to feel like, let's explore other options maybe. But again, she's already $3,600 behind on her mortgage. It's already a 7% interest rate. So that's a high monthly payment. If this even goes another couple of days and this closes in July, that's another missed payment. So now she's at 8K total owed. She's in a bad spot. So, why she's at, yeah, I don't know why. It sounds like she's moving to, she's trying to move to Maryland. That's part of this process of her selling the property. So I don't know if she's relocating for a new job and maybe she quit her job before moving and now I'm not exactly sure what is going on. So I just again want to apply myself as helping, right? Let's get your mortgage back on track. Let's get that paid and so your mortgage is back in good standing. Good point was made in the chat that'll be beneficial to her credit. So 30 days late is never good on anybody's credit. Once you get to 60 days late, that's bad. Now your credit score is going to be dropping 20 to 50 points probably off of that. And then once you get to 90, it's game over. Now financing is tough on that next property. That's the big thing too, is if she plans on purchasing something wherever she's going, if she's got a recent 30 or 60-day late on her mortgage, it's going to be very tough to get financing on that new property because that lender's going to see that fresh 30 or 60-day late, and it's going to raise a lot of questions on the financing for the new property, and it's going to make that tough. So she kind of needs to make a decision relatively quick so we can get the ball rolling on this and see if we can make something work and find an owner occupant for her. It's in Florida, northern Florida, so decent sized market of like 50,000 population. So there are owner occupants out there. It's just how quick can we find them and get a deal done. Thank you. I appreciate it. Before I go make dinner, anybody have any questions on the call? Does anybody have questions on maybe anything that was said during the call? Anything that I can help with? Several people are typing. Always good. Are you planning to wholesale this or will he renovate it? No, this is a turnkey property. So somewhat recently updated, nice kitchen cabinets, nice hardwood floors. It's a turnkey, ready to go property in Florida, northern Florida. So this would be a wholesale deal. She asked me on the phone, would you be the buyer? And I told her, unfortunately for this one, probably not, because there are zero exit strategies. I can't do a long-term tenants. Mortgage payment on this is like 36, almost $3,700. Long-term rental comps in that area are like 1,900, 2,000. She currently has it on the market for sale and for rent. The for rental listing is $3,300 a month. So if she were to rent it out and find a renter at 3,300, she's losing over $300 a month. So every month she's writing a check for $300 at least every single month. So again, she doesn't have great alternatives. She can sell it on the market, which she's already on the market. So how long is it going to take for you to find this buyer? You've already been looking for a while now. Or you're going to find a renter willing to pay 3,300, which I don't know how or why, but even so, you're writing a bare minimum $300 a month check every single month to have a tenant in place, plus repairs and maintenance and all of those things that are going to come with having a renter in place. So I think this is going to be the best option for her, 100%, especially with somebody willing to come in and pay off her mortgage default and closing costs on her behalf, allow her to go move on to that next stage. So I think we'll be in a good spot for this one. Sipowitz, of course, brother, of course. Glad you were able to be here. Um, any other, yeah, rat buyer mostly likely. So in this scenario, so what's interesting on the wrap buyer side is you can structure it many different ways, but you can structure it two ways where you could either be the end buyer. So let's just say the underlying mortgage was whatever, 5% interest and $2,000 a month. I could buy that and then wrap it to an owner occupant at 7% interest and $2,500 a month. And now I'm keeping $500 a month difference. In this scenario, the interest rate is already 7% and the monthly payment is already almost $3,700 a month. So it's probably going to be tough to find a buyer in a timely manner that's willing to pay more than that. That's going to pay 9 to 10% interest and $4,000 or more a month. That's going to be a very, very specific person. It's going to take a while to find. So in this scenario, I think the best thing to do is just source the owner occupant and give them the terms that already exist. And that owner occupant will just pay my assignment fee. So instead of me assigning this to an investor, I would just assign it to an owner occupant and they get the 7% and the 3,600. They don't get the inflated monthly payment and inflated interest rate. So that's the only way I think this deal makes sense is sourcing the owner occupant directly and just assigning the terms to that owner occupant. So it would be a new homeowner, so you can't make any spread. Correct. I don't think this, I mean, I don't know, maybe. But I think it'd be tough, especially with her time frame, especially with that missed mortgage payment. I think to find somebody willing to pay over $4,000 or more a month, and maybe an 8 or 9% interest rate. Do I think you could find them? Yes, of course, they're out there, but how long is it going to take to find? I just think it would take too long. You're risking going into July at that point and hitting that second missed payment, or you would just, as the end buyer, as the investor, would have to commit, okay, we're gonna close, I'm gonna pay June's payments, I'm gonna pay everything. And then I just have to know it might take me 60 to 90 days to find that person. And I'm gonna have to make mortgage payments during that period of time. So I have to add that into my entry fee and my holding costs, knowing that I'm gonna have to make probably 2 to 3 mortgage payments while I find that person. Or let's just try to find the person and don't give them the inflated terms. Let's just assign the terms that are already in place. What's the entry fee? Right now, the entry fee that was originally negotiated, A to B from buyer to seller was $8,600. But then she sent over that mortgage statement. Originally, we thought the interest rate was like 6%. Come to find out it's 7% flat. Plus, she owes about $3,700 on a missed payment. So my goal would be to pay the 3,600 and maybe still give her $1,500 to $2,000 as a thank you, but cash to close being $5,000 plus closing costs is the goal on a $386,000 mortgage balance. So you guys can do the math. I don't have my calculator, but that's got to be what, a little over 1%, 1.5% of the mortgage balance. Owner occupant is just another term for a normal homeowner. Correct. Yeah. Anybody that's occupying the home and has ownership of that property in some capacity would be an owner occupant. Lease option, yeah, you could do a lease option on this one. Yeah, I would say either or. I think with that higher, yeah, you could do either or. I mean, it really doesn't matter. You're probably gonna be marketing to the same person, whether a lease option buyer or a seller finance like contract for deed buyer. Contract for deed or land contract usually will result in someone willing to pay more money as a down payment as opposed to a lease option, because a lease option is you're a tenant first with an option to purchase. So that person has zero ownership in that property until they execute their option to purchase, where land contract or contract for deed, they have ownership on that in that property on day one. So they have equitable interest. So they're willing to pay more on their monthly payments. They're willing to pay more on a down payment because they have ownership. Lease option, you're probably only getting a 5% option fee at most. And they're gonna try to negotiate on monthly payments because again, they have no ownership. I was thinking they're going to boost up too, if you guys hear more than likely be covered by the rents, but it's on a 30-year DSCR at night. No, it's savage. The PITR would be more than likely to be covered by the rents. I feel like that's something that has to be entertained because multifamily, obviously rents can always be increased 2 to 5% per year. And that 9.7% is high on the DSCR. You could probably even refinance now at a lower, I think my DSCR guy is like 7.5, 7.75 right now. So there's probably even, depending on the equity spread, there's probably even a world where you could refinance that now. But regardless, I think multifamily is always the way to go in that scenario. You'll always have more options. So if it can at least cover and you're not losing your ass on it, and obviously the market makes sense. I don't know New York at all. So, but if the market makes sense, I think that's something that in the next 12 months, as long as rates slowly either stabilize or come down, that 9.7 could realistically probably be 7% in the next 12 or so months. After the election, after rates, again, I think that definitely makes sense, but that's high on DSCR for sure. Anything else? I think I got everything after the election, 100% after the election. Always fine. All these problems exist until after the election, then they all just miraculously go away. So we just gotta play the game until that's over with. Appreciate you. Yeah, again, fourplex, there's a lot of options there. I mean, you could do a lot of stuff. Obviously, 4 units still fall into the residential multifamily side, so there's always you can get into the seller financing on those sides and seller finance with an owner occupant who wants to live in 1 unit, rent out the other 3. You can just refinance either now or in the near future to a much more preferable rate. You have a multifamily, so again, you have multiple rents coming in. As long as you can cover the debt service and it's in a good appreciating market, keep raising those rents. I think that'd be a good play in the next 12 to 24 months. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Interest rates are going, yeah, I mean, I wish they would come down quicker, but I'll take any relief that we can get. I got another creative deal, which is called, yeah, I'll hit you up after I'm done eating. My thoughts on wholesaling. I think it depends. I know some people Um, I like wholesaling in terms of, I like wraps. So I like wrapping to seller, to owner occupants. I like that business model. I like no maintenance expenses, no overhead. I like being able to purchase a property subject to that has underlying mortgage, let's just say for 300,000. And then seller financing that to an owner occupant for, let's just say 350, $25,000 down. So I have $25,000 in equity and I'm making a spread on the monthly payments. I'll do that all day long. So if I find a property off market that is subject to or created, listing that on the market, not to sell traditionally, but to sell it creatively to try to make that spread on the equity and the monthly payment. I like wholesaling for that reason. Other HOA fees, yeah, so that's I think $35 a month for the HOA on that one, somewhere around there. You can dial down how that works for the buyer and how they assume ownership of the association or the other contracts for what we need to put. The HOA stuff it can be tricky, because the HOA, whoever's on the deed to the property usually remains with the HOA. So with that, we usually can supply the promissory note and the mortgage deed, the deed of trust and the closing documents to transfer that ownership, for the HOA. Same with the insurance. So contract for deed or land contract can be complicated in a way because the deed is not transferring to the end buyer until they refinance or sell. But you have all of the closing documents and the promissory note and the deed of trust, in order to supply the insurance company and the HOA and things like that. So just a couple extra steps. Me and Carter have a deal right now where the seller, I posted it in the main chat earlier. The seller's ready to go, but they do not want the deed to transfer. That's a big, big caveat. They're like, I'm willing, I agree to the terms, I agree to the structure, I agree to everything. I just do not feel comfortable transferring my deed, at closing. I'm not comfortable with that. So we're gonna do a contract for deed or land contract there. Because the other terms make sense. I think we're only paying like $5,000 at closing or something like that. So it just depends, but you have all the closing documents, you have the promissory note, you have the trust to help with those scenarios like HOA and insurance. Yeah. All right. John, I'll hit you up after dinner. We'll hop on a call. I appreciate it. I'll give everybody updates on this one. I'm gonna send out this updated dot loop that's gonna show us paying the default mortgage plus probably, I don't know, $1,500 or so at closing. So total cash to close, $5,000 plus closing costs, which gives an entry fee of, I think, like 1.5%. So imagine purchase a $400,000 property for $5,000 plus closing costs. So grand total is probably gonna be somewhere around $10,000. So yeah, anywhere from like a 1.5 to 2% entry fee. That's the power of creative, if it makes sense, of course. So I'll keep everybody updated, let you know. Hopefully, drop the executed agreements in the chat after that gets signed. Yes, sir. All right, everybody, I appreciate it.